Welcome to this episode of Selling in Idaho. We hope that it'll be beneficial for you because we've got a really hot tip and it's called pre-listing inspection. Don't you agree?
So important.
It is.
Pre-listing inspections are so important.
So between the two of us, we've done hundreds and hundreds of buyers. And I mean, imagine this, even though you're selling your house, you're going to have to buy somewhere. And then you're excited, you win the contract, you're in contract. And then the next step is the scary one, right? It's like
the inspection.
Okay. So you could lose sleep. I remember losing sleep thinking, when are they going to turn up?
Well, yeah. And then I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the other day, I literally took some clients out and it was an over $1 million home, but it was on acreage. So the windows were really dirty and dusty. It happens. It's natural. It's an acreage home. But their first question is, did the window seal break? Did it go bad? And I called the agent and said, did you do a pre-listing inspection? They said no. The clients wouldn't even consider an offer because they were like, they could have gone bad. We don't know. I mean, that steered away a potential offer just because it was dirt. And we could have figured that out at the beginning.
And that's the biggest point. I got a story to tell you. So hang in here because you're going to love the story. But there's a couple of things whenever I'm sitting with a seller, I say it's really important to do this because what if we catch something big, like the 4-letter word, MOLD? If you're coming from the West Coast, that might as well be another 4-letter word because they're like, I mean, it's true. I mean,
so true.
And 1 in 20 homes usually have microbial growth here. Mold. But we don't have what they call the black mold. I haven't seen one yet. And I've talked to other remediation companies and it's just so rare to find that here. But if you have somebody in contract and then they do an inspection and then they find microbial growth, they bounce. It is crazy. So we don't want them bouncing on you. So we do that and then we can fix it up front and then let them know. And the other thing is that they feel confident knowing, and we use we got a couple inspectors, and I'm going to tell a story about one in particular that does thermal imaging, and that catches a lot of problems. But if they see the inspection, I say probably about 60%, wouldn't you say, waive it because they're so excited that they got the buyers.
At least 60%, because I don't think I've had one that decided to do an inspection when we do our pre-listing inspections, because the inspector that we used is so well known, that's who they would have used anyway. So they're like, oh, this is perfect. Mm-hmm. And they're so thorough. They see everything. And then we usually have a list of like, hey, this is the items that we've actually addressed.
Oh, you know what's really funny? I've had them not use ours. And it was a $2 million property. And I said, yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. And so we have our laundry list from our inspector. And they're like, no, we're going to use our own. So they get an inspector and they meet up with the inspector at the end of the inspection. And he goes, yeah, so I caught about 4 or 5 things I think should be addressed. And he starts going through them. And the buyers are like, well, what about this? And what about that? And he's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. She whips out my inspection report. And she's like, well, they caught this and they fixed it. And this one they didn't fix because they weren't going to. And you didn't catch this and you didn't catch this. So we use really good inspectors.
We do.
And we don't want it to be the reverse, right? To where you're probably hoping I don't want them catching everything. But honestly, if we catch everything and we get most of the big stuff taken care of, we're not going to have any problems.
Yeah. And then you go in it with confidence, with such confidence. It's like people place an offer. Well, we're concerned about this. Well, no, you're not. Here's the inspection and it's taken care of.
And here's the receipts. Mm-hmm. So we supply all that and it really helps. Like you said, it builds confidence. And then guess what happens next? They may choose to have a reinspect on the items that we did inspect, which is really cool, fine. Because not all the time some of the stuff gets done properly. So cool. But they can move forward now with the appraisal. And if they move forward with the appraisal, you just shrunk your 30 days into like 3 weeks because we could skip the inspection portion of it and close sooner, which makes everybody happy.
Well, and not only that, but let's think of it this way too. If you have a home that we're at the top of the market, right? Like we are in a good time, spring, and it's the first weekend out and we get 7 offers and we get under contract. You're cutting out that contingency time frame by a good chunk so that, let's say they decide they change their mind. No, this isn't the house for us. We still have fresh offers in like, hey, it's one day, let's go. Otherwise, you could have up to 10 business days that you're off the market
Off market.
because of an inspection.
Mhm.
And then after that, those 7 other offers that came in, they've already found a home.
Yeah.
So you're really doing yourself a disservice
Not
by
having.
not having a pre-listing inspection.
Yeah, I do it on all my homes. I don't care if it's 3 million or if it's 300,000. The only time I waive and don't do it if the home is new, like a couple of years old. If it's 4 years or older, I highly recommend it. Or if you've already had one done recently, I'm trying to think of anything else I've ever waived. Pretty much those are the only two I
An
won't.
investor special, if we have an investor special.
Or a fixer-upper, where the investor comes in, he's like, I already know everything that's
Yep.
wrong. So we won't do those on those. But for the most part, yeah, everything for us, and we pay for that with Admont
Oh,
Realty.
absolutely.
I think it's
Absolutely.
important, and I think it's on us to have to pay for that. Now, the repairs are on you. So, and here's the other thing is, this was on the buyer side. So I represented a buyer. I was a new agent. And I use this company that we use now pretty regularly, maybe twice. And I was terrified because they did thermal imaging. This is part of what they do. So there was a shower above and it was a closet. Yeah, you looking?
I'm like, there was?
So in this house, you open the closet up and it was kind of like a pantry. It was attached to the kitchen, but yes, not a pantry, but no one really looks in there. So he saw above in the thermal imaging a blue spot because he had the hot water on, and it's a shower that they haven't used in probably 5 years because the teenagers had moved out.
Yeah.
And so he was showing me where there was a drip. And so I told the listing inspection that we want it repaired. So the listing inspection brings his plumber in, and he tells us that there's no problems. We've done the moisture meter up there and there's no moisture. So now I'm in a quandary, right? I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm a new agent. And I'm like, well, they all know what they're talking about, right? So, but I stuck to my guns because I really believed in this inspector. And I'm like, no, he says there's a drip. There's a drip. So they hem-hawed about it, the listing agent and the plumber. And they said, if you cut this open, you're going to pay for the fix. And I'm like, to, repatch it, retexture it, do all this. And I'm like, well, how much is that going to cost? He said about $350. They said, it's worth it.
Yep.
Because I can only imagine that falling through. So we're all sitting around, me, the new agent, the experienced listing agent, and the plumber. And he starts cutting this hole in there and he pulls the sheetrock down.
You guys were all there watching him?
Yeah. Yeah, because it was literally like this between me and the listing agent. And had he done this inspection with my company at that time, he would have found it. So anyways, he pulls the sheetrock down and it's dry as a bone. I'm like, oh. And then you can see the insulation, dry as a bone. I'm like, oh, that's $350. And so he pulls the insulation down, dry. And then he looks and he's like, well, I'll be darned. And you can see the little drip coming down one at a time. It was so minute that they weren't picking it up on the moisture reader because it was dry, 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 and then the drip. And so they fixed it. But I marched out of there like, I am the cat's meow. Yeah, go me.
Wait, and so wait. So where was the drip? The drip was coming from the shower?
The shower. And that hadn't been used in 5 years, but my clients would have used it.
And so the inspection company caught it on the infrared?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was one little tiny drip. And it was like one every 30 seconds.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So it's important. And then I just recently had a listing. And they trenched the crawl space because they had a lot of water.
Yeah.
And the sub pump wasn't working. So they trenched the perimeter and then they put 2 sub pumps in there. And, I was told it's all like new. So I did my inspection, microbial growth all along the wall. So that would have never been caught had I not questioned it or had the inspection done. So then they went in there, they foamed it, they cleaned it, and now we have a warranty on top of it.
Well, that's something interesting. I'm glad you brought up too, because not a lot of people, I think, would know Idaho's homes are majority built on crawl spaces.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So like California, all of them are slab.
Yeah. So, yeah. So if those buyers come in, they freak out about all this stuff.
This is all new and scary to them,
Yeah.
and they don't understand. And
Yeah.
it's just because each state is so different. But I
Yeah.
love our crawl space.
Mhm.
I actually, my husband does electrical, and so he'll go in and he'll put floor outlets, and he goes in the crawl spaces, and
But there's a lot to find in there. So if you haven't had a home inspection in more than 2 years or something, I highly recommend it, especially before you list your home. So, moral of the story, get a home inspection. And that's this podcast is to talk about that. So anyways, if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Like, who should we talk to? We'll give you a list of a couple of inspectors for you to choose from. You can ask those questions. Do you do thermal imaging? And another thing is they also, if you're out of town and you want to watch it back, they'll record it for you too with all the problems that were in the house.
Well, and that's another good thing that I just want to note as well for people watching, because this is supposed to be educational. It's supposed to help you guys, right? It's supposed to like give you direction. None of this, like nobody we use is a kickback situation. We vet everybody we use based solely on how good of a job they do. So when we give you our recommendations, it's, hey, because we've tried and tried and tried, and these are the best of the best.
And speaking of which, one of the companies that we use a majority of the time, if they miss something and let's say it sells and then they catch that it wasn't caught, they pay for it. So that's why I really love
Yeah, because they stand behind their work.
Yeah.
And their work shows it.
And, on a future podcast, we'll have one of our more commonly used vendors, like the one particular inspector. We'll have him come on because there's some funny
stories.
Yeah, I've had an inspector fall through a ceiling. We've got some fun ones.
Well, we could show the pictures too, like all the pictures he has of like the peeing on the air conditioning unit.
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh.
There's you guys don't have those homes, but yeah.
No.
Anyways, thanks for joining this podcast, and we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.